Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the MTG Goldfish Podcast, episode 128, your weekly podcast covering everything Magic the Gathering related. You can find us on Google Play, iTunes, mtggoldfish.com, and now on YouTube. Joining me, as always, the crew, Richard, the owner of MTG Goldfish. What is up, Richard?
Hey, guys. What's going on?
Hey, Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, our resident jank brewer and all-around content creator for Magic the Gathering. Seth, how's it going?
How's it going, guys?
It's going well. Chaz, joining you as always, all-around content creator focusing on the financial aspect. So, for this week, not as crazy as usual. I know I usually use that term a lot, but pretty low-key docket for this week. We got a ton of stuff to talk about for Hour of Devastation, specific cards. Just wanted to talk about an overarching, what we've seen so far in terms of Aftermath, but a few specific cards to talk about as well, and fish mail. So, from last week, we got some really interesting spoiler cards. So let's just talk about them. We'll go individually and then the overall kind of discussion there. So take it away, Richard.
All right. So we got the final two gods, Scarab God and Locust God. So Scarab God, 3 blue and a black, legendary creature, god, 5/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. 2 blue and a black, exile target creature card from a graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. When the Scarab God dies, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step.
Sweet. I did not expect it to be like zombie-centered, and obviously, I mean, when they revealed the Scorpion God, we were going to get the other gods that are Bolas's colors, so I guess it makes sense, blue-black. I mean, short of Commander, which is, like, completely awesome, I think this could, zombies is kind of mid-rangey enough that this could insert one of these as, like, a top end, and, I mean, if this really gets going, I mean, it's pretty hard to stop, and the game's going to end pretty quickly. But again, bearing like castaway, like removal, that kind of removal. I do really like this a lot.
Yeah, I think this might be my pick for the most powerful of the gods, but I also think that you don't play in a zombie deck. I can't really see that it's worth splashing blue for a 5-drop. Like, we have, Gisa and Geralf in the format, which is a pretty powerful, expensive blue-black zombie card, and it's just never been good enough. I'm mostly excited for it is just like this self-sustaining finisher. Like, even if you're not getting awesome things from the graveyard, just being able to pay 4 and get a 4/4 by exiling something from any graveyard, so you can get your opponent's stuff that you kill too, and then you slowly build up a board of zombies, and even if you're just like scrying 1 each turn, that's like Thassa God of the Sea, which was very strong in Standard. So that's how I see this card, is more of like a good value finisher, mid-range threat in a deck that doesn't really care about zombies, and you get the zombies from its Pseudo Eternalize ability.
Yeah, I think it's good enough to play by itself. I don't know that you would use it as a control finisher or something. It seems not good enough, but in a mid-rangey deck. But blue and black are not typically mid-range colors in Standard. But if zombies go a bit bigger, this could be pretty good, because there are some board states you can't get through. Your zombies can chump block for days, but they can't attack profitably, and Scarab God kind of lets you chip away and kill them, on top of generating value with the Pseudo Eternalize there. It beats Ensnaring Bridge. Like, if there's a Ensnaring Bridge type effect, like, you're good to go. So I can see its uses in cases where you don't want to go into combat, and its ability is pretty strong. The only downside is it's not a zombie. EDH players can lament. It doesn't pump itself, but it's brutal in EDH because it drains everyone at the table for life, and you get to keep making zombies out of everyone's graveyard, right? And not just zombies, like copies of. You get to basically reanimate, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. So this card is bonkers in EDH, and I could see it replacing Jissa and Geralf as the commander in some blue-black zombie decks.
And I sent this out. We talked about the Scorpion God, and obviously we're about to talk about, we talked about this one and the next one. I think it's like we really need to emphasize how awesome they are for Commander, and while that's obvious, they really are that good. and generating a lot of hype, which they should. And I totally agree with you, Richard. I think this could pass Gisson Geralf too. I mean, you're absolutely right. It hits every player, and you just get that kind of grindy. You get past these weird board states that normally, like Gisson Geralf, or even any other card rather, can't really get past, and it's just continually sitting there. I understand it's not a zombie. I do think it should have some synergy with zombies and not just its own ability. Like, not utilizing that first ability with any kind of other zombie in your deck, I think is kind of not optimal.
I mean, for Commander, you don't even need just reanimation.
Oh yeah, that for sure, yeah.
Like a free reanimation for 4 mana, like, will win you the game. You can just take everyone's creatures, so that's pretty crazy on its own. All right, next god, the Locust God, 4 blue-red, legendary creature god, flying 4/4. When you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. 2 blue-red, draw a card, then discard a card. When the Locust God dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step.
This has got to be like the sweetest god for Commander.
Yeah.
There's just so many cool things you can do with the Locust God. It's so sweet with wheel effects. You can potentially, I believe, go infinite with it if you have like a Beck Call type effect where you draw whenever a creature enters the battlefield. You just cast something that draws a card and you start a loop where you just draw your entire deck basically and make 1 million 1/1 insect tokens. So I really love this card. I think it's going to be overshadowed in Standard by Torrential Gear Hulk, which is, I think, what it's competing for. If you want to play this, it's got to be like a blue-red control type deck where you have Pull from Tomorrow, you have Glimmer of Genius and stuff, and I just can't imagine that this beats out Torrential in that deck, or that you can play more than 4 or 6 drops in that deck. So I think that's my concern for Standard, but it seems like a huge hit for Commander. Probably my favorite god for Commander.
Yeah, I agree, and that is the huge concern for Standard. And Torrential Gear Hulk and this card are going to be together for a long while. Maybe there's some sort of split, but I'm just not seeing why you would play this over Torrential Gear Hulk like 9 out of 10 times. But other than that, I mean, it's really sweet. Okay, just an aside, I don't see blue-red and Locust. Like, I'm just not seeing it. I'm sorry. This needed to be like green or something like that. And this is not just bias. This is not just bias. But I just don't see blue-red and Locust. Like, I'm not seeing it.
And they have haste, Chaz. Haste. And they fly. That's blue.
And Richard, you have to weigh in on, apparently this is out there that it's like a flavor fail, that in the story the Locust God destroys the barrier of the Heckma, but the Locust can't actually break past the actual card. So you have to weigh in on that.
I have no idea what's happening with the story. I'll believe you if you say it's a flavor fail. It is a generic Is It card that they just slapped a Locust God on there, but I don't know. It's not. I don't know. I'm not going to complain about this one. I'll pick my battles. This one gets a pass.
Okay,
but this, I don't know. The Locust God is a very cool ability, but I don't think it's standard playable. Unless you can somehow draw cards as soon as it enters the battlefield, it's going to come in as a 6-drop and die immediately without doing... even if you untap with it, like, you just made like 2 1/1s. It's not like something crazy happened, right? So it needs to survive for quite a while to generate advantage. So I don't really like it for standard. EDH, if you have Beck Call, do you just deck yourself and die?
I think you do.
It's not a May, right? You just loop and deck yourself.
No, it's
right?
not a May.
So it's a Lab Maniac kill? Is that what it is now?
Yeah.
Yeah, or there's like other... What's the 6-drop green thing that's in all the welcome decks? I think there are effects. Maybe Beck Call wasn't the best answer.
What?
But I think there are... Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you draw a card.
Stuff.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Perforos or something, Locust God, Wheel.
Ooh, yeah, that's pretty good.
You could do like... Yeah. Some really interesting stuff, but you could do that with a lot of the wheel like effect commanders. No, I mean this is just like the newest in the line of streamlined.
I mean, I guess if you don't want to annoy everyone with Leovold, you just put in the Locust God.
Fair enough.
You have haste, so you can't even like give everyone a turn to deal with your board, right? You can just go off and kill everyone still with haste. All right. Let's move on to Chaz's favorite card, probably. It's a green card. Uncaged Menagerie. X green sorcery. It's a mythic. Search your library for up to X creature cards with different names that each have converted mana cost X. Reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle your library.
So between me and Seth and like 500 comments telling us how each one of us is wrong about a certain aspect of this card, we got there. So just throwing that out there.
What's
you
the
can't
conclusion?
get Walking Ballista. You can't get Walking Ballista, but you can also get some other stuff that I think we both read it wrong.
Wait,
So
you
between
can
the
get
two of
Walking
us.
Ballista?
No,
Okay,
you
so
can't get
basically-
Walking
Yeah,
Ballista.
you can. It's a 0, right? You get
Yeah,
0 creature
right.
cards.
Right.
If you cast
But
it for
for
2 mana,
three,
you get
so-
nothing.
So
Right.
if X is 1, you get one drop.
one
If X
drop.
is 2,
Right.
you get two drops, but they have to be unique. And then
Yes.
if X is 3, you get three drops, unique,
Yeah.
etc. Right?
Okay, now, to me, this is not a 4 of bonafide staple, but this could be like a fair collected company. I mean, you do get the 2 cards, they don't go into play, and I understand like fair collected company is not going to be like amazing any people out there, but I think for 5 mana in standard, that's not like out of the realm of possibility. You can go grab Ronas, Tireless Tracker, Rishkar, like a lot of different nice creatures, and it doesn't exile from your graveyard, so you could potentially get it back. I think this is like, it could easily be a 1 or 2 of in like those grindy mid-range like BG counter decks. Am I like not the? I don't know. I feel like I'm not totally out there on this.
Okay, so I actually agree with that. I think this card is... I think it bothers me because I feel like people are vastly overrating it. I got so many tweets of like, oh, I can get the Vizier Druid combo. And I'm like, well, just cast a Collected Company and put it on the battlefield and win. Or just use a Court of Calling and like put it on the battlefield and win. I don't know why you would ever use this when you have Collected Company or Court of Calling available in the format. But I do agree that it could be like a 1 of value card. Drawing 3 creatures for 5 mana isn't that bad. You can play it in Commander, and it's probably even sweeter because you can get a bunch of, I don't know, Titans or something at 6 mana. There's like cool stuff you can get. So I think it can see potentially fringe standard play, but I don't think this is... It's not Collected Company, it's not Court of Calling, it's not an effect that you can really build a deck around, but you can play it like a weird Harmonize to generate card advantage in like grindy matchups potentially.
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised this was a debate because I thought the card was really bad. Like, I don't know what you would do with
Why?
this. Like, you have weird deck building restrictions, and even in the Dream case, at 5 mana, you get 3 cards. You have to have 3 drops with different names, which is already pretty bad, right? Because usually you don't have that many 3 drops in your deck, and, you want to play 4 of the good ones. So you have, like, kind of like the birthing pod problem where you have deck building restrictions, except these deck building restrictions inherently mess with your mana curve, right? If you want to cast this for, say, 5 in Commander, you need to have 5 drops, or 7, you need to have 7. Like what, like that, your deck is going to be like totally messed up from that. So like, I don't know, like for 2 mana, it's a 4 mana draw 2, it's a 4 mana divination. Like, I mean, I guess
But you don't just draw 2
tutoring.
random cards.
Like, you're
Yeah.
tutoring, right? But I don't know. Outside of, like, a very specific combo, like, I can't see this as, like, a value card, like Collected Company. Or, I'd rather play Chord or something like that. I can't see it being used in Standard. Like, it needs to have something, very, very specific. Like, for example, you're playing a combo deck and you need tutors for 1 drops or something. You just play this as a 3 mana tutor or something, right? But I don't know. It's just weird. It doesn't, it doesn't scream to me like value or very good, but you might have some weird combo-y usage for it because it is a tutor, and tutors are very good in Standard if, you have a purpose for them.
I was pushing for only standard, and you're right. Like, it's not going to pale. It's going to pale in comparison to instant cards like Collected Company and Court of Calling. If those are in the format, you don't play this. But I think the only place it can be really is standard and like EDH purposes, obviously. I don't think it's much of a restriction as we think, and again, it doesn't get exiled, so maybe somewhere down the line we get something that can bring spells back. Maybe there is one, and I'm just not thinking about it right now. No, like an Eternal Witness? Yeah, kind of thing.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's outside, I don't think that's, like, totally crazy.
Green Warden of Marasa. You have to play 5 other 6-drops in your deck. You make 8 mana, get them all. I will say about this card, I think Wizards did a great job with the mythics we've seen so far. One of the things I like to do is criticize Wizards for making mythics that I don't think should be mythics. But apart from this card, which I cannot wrap my head around why this sorcery speed, worse than Collected Company and Court of Calling is mythic if those cards are rare, every other mythic feels really mythic to me. So overall, I think great job with the mythics, but what's the justification for this being a mythic?
This feels very mythic. You read it, you're like, what does this do? You read it again, you're like, really? And then you read it one more time, and you're like, okay. And it's like the only card that does it, right? That's mythic to me.
Yeah.
It's very unique, right?
I just don't want to cast it out because we overlooked Seasons Past. I'm just throwing my card in the hat and saying maybe let's not sleep on this entirely. That's all.
Well,
I just like the inclination, but Seasons Past was like an engine. This could be part of something. I don't know.
It was only an engine when Finkel played it. Whenever anyone else tried it, they won 30% of the time.
If that happens one time, then maybe I would be right one time. That's okay.
All right, next card.
Yeah.
Nimble Obstructionist. 2 blue, Bird Wizard, 3/1, Flash Flying. Cycle for 2 and a blue. When you cycle Nimble Obstructionist, counter target activated or triggered ability you don't control.
This is pretty solid, right? I mean, I love options. You get a cycle that, at worst, you draw a card and stifle something. Sucks that you're not going to be able to stifle their Marvel anymore, but, we'll just sweep that under the rug. Sorry, Seth. they did it just day late, dollar short, right?
It wouldn't have mattered. We still would be losing to Marvel.
This could do some things, but yeah, I just like the dual option of a 3/1 Flash Flying or a stifle draw a card. Like, it's not crazy, but it's not. I think it's a very solid rare.
So I like this card. I actually like it more for Modern than for Standard. We've seen 3/1 flyers, especially flash ones, but in Modern you have like Dillion Click, we have Flicker Wisp, we have even Mind Sensor, even though it's not a 3/1, but close enough. We have these weird 3-mana flash flyers that see a lot of play and are very strong in the format. This one isn't legendary, so you don't have that Dillion Click problem. It might not have as much of an upside as the other cards I just listed off, but I think this is Modern playable and pretty competitively costed. Like, the stats are really good, it's a fast clock, and I think it's going to be very strong.
I disagree. Like, it has to push out another blue card, and, like, are you going to play this over Dillion Click? Like, how important is a 3-mana stifle that draws a card in Modern? And it dies to Lingering Souls. Like, there's just too much stuff competing with it. Like, if Dillion Click didn't exist, maybe if people were marveling in Modern, like, that stifle might help you. But, you stifle a Planeswalker activation, but, like, is that really worth it for 3 mana in a card? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what you would replace. Like, where would this slot in? What deck?
You do get the card
I'm struggling to see how this... Like, how does this rank up against... I know you mentioned that in your your statement there, but I'm with Richard here. I don't see it overthrowing any of those other creatures. And, like, even Mind Sensor already is pretty fringe. Like, if you're arguing fringe, a lot of, like, cards, I guess, could be fringe these days, but...
So here's what I think. I think that this could make... or be part of a blue-white flash control deck. So the thing is, I think it works well with those cards. If you have Spell Queller, you have Dillion Click, you have this thing, you maybe have Mind Sensor, some counter spells, instant speed removal, your opponent's never going to know what to play around. You just pass with your mana up every turn, counter their stuff, mind sensor them if they try to tutor, stifle their fetch land. Like, you have so much flexibility, and you still get a pretty good on-curve body at your opponent's end step if you don't have to do that. Or sometimes, with Spell Queller or Click, you get the good body and you're disrupting your opponent. So I think it could fit into a deck that's built around flash evasive creatures.
Well, let me ask you this. You have more experience probably than Richard and I. You've played that blue-white control list. Like, was there ever a time that you would want a card like this? Because that's probably the best like place for this. Or, I guess more flash-based, but is there ever a time in that control shell that you would want something like Nimble Obstructionist?
I think so.
Okay.
I think that I could imagine. I don't think you're going to necessarily play it as a 4 of, but I think it's something that I wouldn't mind having in the deck, because stifling is relevant. You do get just random free wins if your opponent keeps a land light hand and you can stifle their like third land and they can't play any other stuff. So I think there's enough upside that it can show up in Modern. I don't think it'll be a 4 of or overtake those other cards, but I think it can be played alongside those cards, and I think it has enough flexibility that I would consider putting it in my deck as like a 1 or a 2 of.
All right, I agree. You changed my mind. I like the line of you're on the play, you have 3 mana open, they play a second land, either they play a fetch, get stifled, and pretty much lose the game right there, or they play something else and you spell queller it. And then the next time they want to fetch, you stifle. So, yeah, having the ability to stifle on a cycle for 3 mana is not terrible.
You did it, Seth. You got
I got
made
that.
it
You got me with
believe.
the land destruction. You got me with the
Yeah.
land destruction.
It's always about the land destruction.
Oh, so many times just randomly stifled in Modern with like disallow or something. And you're like, why are you playing that? Why
And
did I just get stifled?
lose though, but like, that really sucks.
All right. Standard? You can't stifle fetch lands in Standard. Is this good? What is there to stifle?
Evolving Wilds. Well, I mean, Marvel's gone, so I still think it's good enough. I mean, Blue-White Flash is always kind of hovering around, and I think another 4 of Flash creatures never not a bad thing.
Well, Walking Ballista is also a
Planeswalkers.
thing, so that's problematic for
Walking
this card.
Ballista, yeah.
I guess you
I
could
think
stifle.
Planeswalkers are the big target.
Really?
For stifling. I mean, if I think about when people play Disallow against me, the only time it's ever not countering a spell is when it like stifles my Liliana Ultimate or something brutal like that. And I mean, it cycles, so I think anything with cycling has weird potential because of cycling theme decks with like New Perspectives.
Yeah, I was
Archfiend
thinking
of
about that,
Ifnir. Like, there's some cycling matters stuff that might make this better than it actually is, just because a deck cares about the cycling part.
New Perspectives actually makes it stifle.
That's true. For free.
So that's
free
interesting.
Stifle.
All right, next card. MTG Goldfish preview card. Solemnity. 2 and a white enchantment. Players can't get counters. Counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands.
This thing's nuts. And again, we just have a ton of these answer cards, but all the stuff that they're answering is banned. No, I'm just kidding. But these are the cards like we talked about last week, right? Seth, that they just need to be in the pool. I think we talked about that on the other cast, but they just need to be there. And these are the kinds of cards that if they existed like 6 months ago, maybe we wouldn't have had to ban anything at all. And I think it's pertinent that they gave this to you. So,
Yeah.
Absolutely 100% love this card, and it has sent many ripples into like the Magic card pool already, both financially and just hype, like, and just all around in general.
Yeah, so when I was spoiling it, I was very focused on the hate card aspect of it, and I think it's actually very good at that in Standard. It really locks down the green-black decks. It also locks down Teamer Energy decks, so it's relevant against like 2 of the top 3 or 4 decks in the format. So I think it's very good as far as being a hate card in Standard, but I was amazed by how many weird random combos there apparently are with this card, dating back to like really old things like Cumulative Upkeep, Decree of Silence, and I don't think any of those things will necessarily be super good outside of like Commander and for fun, but there's a lot of weird unintended consequences, and I'm pretty sure Wizards didn't necessarily realize was a thing. Even like in Modern, playing this and then playing Phyrexian Unlife, you kind of have a hard lock until your opponent kills one of them. So there's a lot of things going on with this card being a combo piece outside of being just a really good hate card for Standard.
Is this good enough for Modern? So is it good enough offensively for Modern? Are people playing, I don't know, Malera combo but with Solemnity instead? Or, one of these weird combos? And is it good enough as a sideboard card? Would you bring this in against decks trying to do that? Or would you forego it and use, a different type of sideboard card? What is the impact of Modern for this card?
So it's not a very good sideboard card at the moment in Modern, because its main targets, like Infect, isn't super playable right now. But it could be very important in the future. It does kind of hate on Affinity and the Ravager kill. It is super good against Infect. If the Vizier Druid combo ever becomes like super good, then this gets much more important. So I don't think I play it in my sideboard right now, but I think there very well could be a time where this is, alongside Sony Silence and Rest in Peace, is a card you really got to have in your sideboard. I do think it's good enough to play it offensively, though. Like, we also had like a Pseudo Humility spoiled today with a 8-drop. Oh geez, what's the name of it? Do either of you remember?
Overwhelming Splendor.
Yeah, Overwhelming Splendor. And one of the things I'm really excited about is we have Enduring Ideal, which has been like a fringe, almost good enough deck. And now with Hour of Devastation, not only do we get a Humility, which is a great lock piece, but we can tutor up Salinity plus Phyrexian Unlife, which is another great lock. So I think decks will experiment with things like that, kind of mono-white prisons with ghostly prisons and Sphere of Safeties, those type of decks. But I don't think you combo off with it with Kitchen Finks and stuff, because you can tutor up your Maliras and your Anafenzas with Court of Calling and Collected Company, and you can't tutor up Solemnity. So I don't think it'll fit there, but I think people will do things with it.
I do think it's good enough, and I do appreciate the question, Richard, because I don't know. I feel like when you ask those questions, you always have like this in your pocket, like, well, it actually does this, and I was like looking down when this actually came out. It might actually be good like right now, and it hits a lot of cards that you wouldn't think of like right away, and they're all main cards in main decks like right now. Like you can't even suspend a Lotus Bloom with this out. Like, there's just all these weird interactions that happen that you don't really think about, and I mean, kind of brought this up, Seth.
Is that confirmed? I was under the impression
you put time
didn't interact,
on it, right?
No, but it's not an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land. It's a spell.
So I don't think it actually interacts with suspend cards. I don't think so. Okay, just to clarify that, I don't think so.
If that were the case, then absolutely yes.
But if it did interact, it would interact in a positive way, right? Because you have no counters, and it just comes into play.
Makes it a Black Lotus, or makes Greater Gargadon come into play for 1 mana, like a Death Shadow or something.
But it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
I still think it's good enough. I mean, for 1 more mana, it does have like those, even in the matchups where it's not super good, like it even kind of hits like affinity stuff, like you said. Obviously Stony Silence is much more geared towards that, but as a card that can hit it can hit more broader decks in the format. I really do like this a lot.
Yeah, I'm not entirely decided. I think Seth is right. It's more offensive, because although it does a lot of things, there are cards that hate on the decks you need to hate on like much better. Like, for example, against Affinity, you don't really want to play this because you'll probably die to Cranial Plating anyway. Like, it's really slow. Like, you'd rather Stony Silence or Shatterstorm or something. And, like, against a Malera combo deck, like, you don't want to rely on this because they'll just tutor up a Rex Sage and kill it and then kill you. So it's like the jack of all trades, but I don't know that it's currently good enough. Like, a deck it would be good enough against would be, like, Infect, where you kind of just slap this down and they have a really hard time dealing with it. So I don't know. I don't think currently it's useful. Kind of like Standard. Like, currently you might not jam this, but, if certain decks rise to the top, like, you always have this ace in your back pocket ready to pull out and just randomly hose people. Like, oh, you can't deal with enchantments? Sorry, you can't win anymore. So I like this card. I think It has potential to see play in Modern, but right now my sideboard's staying the same. I don't think it's changing for Solemnity. Next card we have... It's a translated card, so we just got it today. We don't know the official name. So the unofficial name, Amit Eternal, Tuna Black, 5/5, Zombie Crocodile Demon, Afflict 3. When an opponent casts a spell, put a -1/-1 counter on Amit Eternal. When Amit Eternal deals combat damage to a player, remove all -1/-1 counters from it.
This thing is pretty nuts. I don't know. Apparently, Zombies needs access to 8 creatures with 5 power for 3 mana. And they all synergize really well with each other. So if we all thought Zombies was going anywhere, guess again, like I think Zombies is definitely something they wanted in the format for quite some time because, wow, if pushing 3 like Phyrexian 8 copies of like Phyrexian Negator with like almost no drawback is not enough, here you go.
So, I mean, I don't think this sees playing Zombies right away. Maybe after rotation, but I think it's actually... I mean, you got Lord of the Accursed, stable 3-drop. You got Diregraph Colossus, stable 3-drop. You also have, I can't think of the name of it, the other Crocodile that you were talking about. So that's another one competing for that slot. There's so many things in that slot. I think this ranks like 4th in terms of zombie 3-drops right now. And you can't play 16 3-drops and be an aggro deck. I'm mostly excited about this card, not in Zombies, but with Hapatra. This seems insane with Hapatra, because whenever your opponent casts a spell, it gets a counter, which gives you a Death Touch Snake. So I'm excited for this in a -1/-1 counter Hapatra green-black deck, which I think Hapatra has a lot of potential. It's a powerful card, but it didn't have enough support from just Amonkhet to really be a deck in Standard. But I think now with Hour of Devastation, specifically because of Amit Eternal, but some of the other -1/-1 counter stuff, we might be able to actually play a sort of like -1/-1 counter theme deck in Standard, which we couldn't do before. So I'm really excited for that aspect of it, and I think it might keep Zombies relevant after rotation when you lose Diregraph Colossus, and there was a big question of whether Zombies could survive rotation, but it's looking more like they might be able to based on the Zombies from Hour of Devastation.
Yep, I do like the interaction. Hapatra's really strong. You could also just go straight up mono black aggro, which we've seen to some success, like in Star City Opens and stuff like that. Like, it's always good to have 8 Phyrexian Negators in your back pocket.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm mixed on this. Like, I think if you can make use of its synergies, like its zombie synergies, somehow make use of Afflict, I don't know how, or make use of -1/-1 counters, it's pretty good. 3 mana 5/5 vanilla beater, I don't know that it's good enough, because most likely it's a 3 mana 4/4, because, they're going to play a spell immediately, and I don't think that's good enough to see play in most decks. Like, you need a lot more value out of your 3-drops, but if you can somehow take advantage of synergies, Hapatra is a crazy combo. I don't know what else you could do. Maybe somehow like sacrifice it with his 5 power for something, kind of like Desecration Demon or something like that. I don't know.
Fling it.
Fling?
Yeah, but I mean, if
5
they're
mana,
gonna
deal 5 damage, that's where we're at, 2 cards.
If they're going to use a removal spell, then they were going to use a removal spell anyway, and the -1/-1 counter doesn't matter. I think it's an interesting thing with Afflict too. I didn't really care for Afflict, but sometimes when they're on creatures like this, so you get lightning bolted anyway, even if you block, and that's like the kind of cards that need Afflict on them. Because I haven't been really impressed with Afflict so far, but this is I don't know.
Because if the opponent plays really 3 spells, it becomes a 2/2. You're like, wow, but then you hit them. Either it comes back a 5/5, or you deal 3 damage with Afflict. So you're like, okay, I guess I got something out of it. So it does mitigate the downside of it a bit by having Afflict.
I think people will be surprised at how bad it plays as a standalone threat. Like, you play it, it's going to immediately be a 4/4 or 3/3, and it very likely could just die the next turn when your opponent plays a couple more spells, like just to its own ability. So I think I'm not a huge fan of it as just, I play this because it's big at 3 mana. I think I kind of agree with what Richard was saying. I think you really need the synergies for it to really be playable in Standard, I think.
Yeah, like a 3 mana 4/4 vanilla is like not even playable. And 3 mana 5/5 like maybe playable, but there are like real downsides to the card. So I don't know. It's a mixed bag. We'll see what decks come out, and maybe there is a home for this. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of just left by the wayside as well. Any other cards we want to talk about? We want to touch on Aftermath. This time around, we have much more aggressively costed Aftermath cards. Refuse, Cooperate was spoiled today. Reason to Believe. What do you guys think of Aftermath? Do you like them this time around? Because last time around, they're kind of expensive. We barely see any play in Standard, and if they do see play, it's usually for only one half of the card.
Yeah. They actually still worked out in Limited and stuff, but I do agree. Yeah, this time around, I mean, they were super pushed, and I think they did for Aftermath. Like, they made Eternalize their super, like, overcosted ability this time, and we're like, all right, let's just make a bunch of really sweet Aftermath cards. I mean, Driven to Despair, they're all really good just because they're not, like, 500 mana this time. And I think that's... like no, because it really ended up. I mean,
speaking
Seth's
of unglued,
gripe,
I want 500 mana cards. Just like literally 500 is the mana cost. But okay, go ahead, Chaz.
Yeah, I mean, Seth really did make a great point, and you know there were some viable Aftermath cards in Amonkhet. We're not discounting that, but this time, like the biggest gripe, and it turned out to be true, was that they were just too much mana half the time. And this time around, not only I feel like they're better design in terms of design where they play off each other's sides more, they're just still very competitively costed. So even if you do only need one side of it, there's still a lower cost to be able to, you know, consider in deck building.
I mean, good for Standard, questionable for Limited. Because Aftermath cards were really good in Limited, and now they're even better. So I'm interested to see what it does for Limited balance and like how swingy or bomby decks get when they pick up, you know, these aggressively costed Aftermath cards.
I think that's true, although looking over the list, a lot of the abilities aren't necessarily that good for Limited. Like the old ones, you had like sweepers, you had removal spells, things that made creatures. It seems like a lot of these Aftermath cards aren't as powerful on their face for Limited, especially their back half. Some of them are just like not really that powerful at all. So I think maybe that equals it out. So I feel like the original batch was probably better for Limited, but this batch is way better for Constructed. But the abilities the cards have are not necessarily busted in Limited, which is probably a good thing if you're going to reduce the cost on
except Grind to Dust. Grind to Dust was like an auto win.
Grind to Dust is super sweet, yeah.
Driven for 2 mana, it essentially, like, they don't get +3/+3, but it's like an overrun for 2 mana, and it gives them Curiosity as well. Like, that's a lot for 2 mana, especially in Limited. So I am kind of concerned. I'm with Richard. When you do reduce them so much, like, some of those spells are going to be too good, and then some of them probably won't be as good, because...
Yeah,
I mean, we'll see.
But they're rares. Whatever.
Right.
I don't play Limited anymore anyway, so whatever.
I did want to take issue with Chaz saying Eternalize is overcosted. I actually think the Eternalize cards are fairly costed. Like, I think that's actually what these cards should probably cost. So I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't feel too bad about having them be 5, 6, 7 mana because they are pretty powerful and they are natural card advantage. And if you make them too cheap, people just mill them. But you look at the deals, a 4/4 double strike for 5 isn't that ridiculous, or a 7 mana 4/4 that also gives you a draw 4, discard 2. Like, they're pretty powerful at what they do, I think.
Yeah, I just don't see how you utilize a lot of, like, yeah, drawn out games aside, without the aid of, you know, you have like a Tune of the Aether and making sure you get the land drops, like, in green. I'll just throw it out there. But, I mean, when are you getting to, like, 6 mana in a card that wants to utilize, like, Dream Stealer? Or a deck that wants to utilize like Dream Stealer. I'm just not seeing.
Oh, there's that card from Ixalan which we can't talk about.
I know, but
If you guys listen to X Podcast, you know what card we're talking about. We're like, what are you gonna do with
I
all
know,
this
but
mana?
I can't.
Here we go.
Like, the one that, I mean, again, I'm probably biased, but the one I really like, though, is the Rebuilding Kenra, and that seems like fair, because you get 6 for 4/4, it pumps. I mean, you have Verder's Gearhulk at 5. So I don't think, like, asking for more, like, competitively costed Eternalized cards is out of the question.
I think the front halves, though, Dream Stealer is a bust. Like, I think that card is just bad, but every mechanic has bad cards. But the front halves on these cards aren't that overcosted. I think that's, like, how I look at them. Like,
Sure.
a 2/1 haste that makes something not block is pretty fine on its own. The green thing that pumps is a 2/2 that pumps. That's pretty fine on its own. So the ability is just kind of random upside. Like, you play these cards because the front half's pretty good, and if the game goes really long and you're in this top deck battle, they randomly just steal you a game by coming back as a 4/4 with some sweet abilities.
I still like
I guess
Dream
the
Stealer.
first-
For the
I
record,
guess,
I
like,
still
the
like
first
it.
cast, because I was like, all right, maybe, like, only some of them are 6 mana. Because I was looking at, like, Earthshaker Kenra.
Yeah, they're all
Love the
6.
card. It's very aggressive, but it's like, and then, like, yeah, the upside is, like, you get it later on if some, like, crazy happens and you flood out. But when they're all, like, 6 mana, I don't know.
It's more for limited. If they were like 4
Sure.
or 5 mana, limited would be insane. Like,
Yeah, probably. You're probably right.
But one last card I want to throw in there. One last card. Ronus's Last Stand. Green sorcery. Create a 5/4 green snake creature token. Lands you control don't untap during your next untap step. 2 mana 5/4.
Unplayable.
It would really suck to have that fatal pushed, because it would just suck.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's a lot of power for not that much mana.
I was worried.
And
I
it-
thought Chaz was gonna hate this card as well, and we just all hate this
No,
card.
I don't hate it. I'm actually glad that so far it looks like green got the best card of the cycle. But you know what? It would be better if we had, like, an Elvish Mystic, but we don't.
Why would you need
So-
Elvish Mystic for this?
Because then you could play, if something crazy happens to
Oh,
your
you still have
5/4 on
mana?
turn, you still have mana left over to play another one the next turn.
I don't know. I think this card's pretty bad. Like 2 mana 5/4. If it gets fatal pushed, like you pretty much lost.
Don't get
the
me
game.
wrong. I think the whole cycle is not that very good, but I think this is probably up there with the least drawback of them all.
But I know some people will play this
Interesting.
and it'll win them the game and they'll love this card.
Yeah,
Because sometimes
Because
your
you can
opponent
still-
just has no interaction and you just have a 5/4 now, right? Like
Yeah, it just really sucks that there's not. So.
I mean, the other thing is, too, that you have Grimflayer, which after one attack is going to end up being a 4/4, and you don't time walk yourself. So I think it's competing with a lot of stuff in Standard, too, which makes it even a little bit worse. Like, even if there wasn't a drawback, say your land's untapped, you wouldn't play it over Winding Constrictor in the green-black decks. You probably wouldn't play it over Grimflayer in the green-black deck. So
wait,
even if there was no...
Let's get reasonable here. 2 mana
that's-
5/4 vanilla, you wouldn't just auto jam in every deck. We call that
I think-
Tarmogoyf.
synergy.
And it's
I
auto
think
jammed in
I
every
would,
modern deck, right?
Come on, that's
That's too far. That's too far.
yeah, that's what
You would play a
because
2 mana 5/4 vanilla.
my turn 2, I get a 5/4.
My turn 2, I fatal push it.
Well, no,
That's
okay.
fine. That happens with every creature.
That's like-
but you play a
that's like
Grim
any
Player,
creature.
and I'm like, whatever. I'll play my 5/4 green snake
Yeah.
and go to town, right?
Yeah, then your turn 2, you play a Grim Flare. Then my turn 3, I play a Rishgar. I get a 6/5 snake and a 3/3. Like, go. Like,
It's just vanilla though. Like it doesn't
sometimes
do any-
vanilla
Tarmogoyf,
creatures
Seth.
are
Tarmogoyf
they're
is
big.
just
They're
vanilla.
big enough.
Do you know how hard
was
it
that?
works to get a
Alright,
5-power
alright.
Tarmogoyf?
I think LSV loses on this one. That 2 mana 5/4 vanilla, I think, might get there.
Oh, did LSV say that's
Alright,
not
well-
playable?
No, I don't know. But what was, like, the thing? Like, what does a creature? How big does a creature have to be? Like, a vanilla creature have to be? at its cost, like a 10/10 or something like that.
Oh,
for
I
5
see,
or
I see.
something.
Yeah, but I mean, we have Tarmogoyf, and Tarmogoyf is
Yeah.
very playable. So I would say a 2-mana 5/4 would be very playable. Although it is green, it makes it a bit hard in standard.
That's okay.
I take it back. If there was no drawback, it would probably be playable.
Yeah.
I
I think
retract my statement, but it's the worst
still
of the cycle.
It's
though.
still unplayable.
It's
still
unplayable because it does have a drawback. You can't untap
but
your lands.
If we had access to like an Elvish Mystic, then maybe you could get away with it. But as it is now, I don't see you playing it.
Well, your Elvish Mystic will get Fatal pushed on turn 1, and then you play Rodus.
then the 5/4 is good.
Clear the way for the Rodus, right?
Yeah, exactly. See, you always bolt
wait.
the bird, and then you're good with the 5/4.
It was all a distraction.
I gotta ask you guys though. We have 3 of the cycle's members. We have blue and red left. So put in your predictions now for the blue and red.
Red is some awful like char something, which actually
No,
might not
I think
be
that would be
terrible.
playable. It has to be unplayable.
No, that actually, maybe that actually. I hope it's char actually.
It's like a 1-mana threaten where you can't untap.
No, if it's a threaten, I'm like flipping my keyboard. I'm literally gonna take my 34-inch monitor and just throw it right out the window.
If it was a 5-mana burn spell where you did untap, I think that'd be super playable.
Please don't give me that. Oh.
5 for 3. Yeah. Oh, that would definitely. I think it would too.
And then it untaps. Yeah, then maybe. But if it's tapped, it's like.
But what about is blue just going to be draw cards like
Blue-
draw?
blue is some, like,
No, I
wheel
think
effect.
blue will be like
Some wheel
Cyclonic Rift
effect.
type thing, like return stuff to owner's hands.
Oh, like an evacuation.
Evacuate.
All right.
I hope it's an extra turn spell because we have what's the old
Take an extra
one?
turn, nothing untaps.
Yeah, you have. There's an old one from like Morningtide that's 3 mana.
Yeah,
Take an
Savor the
extra
Moment.
turn. Yes, you skip your untap step. So I think a functional reprint of that would be interesting.
That'd be actually that'd be
would
really good though.
That would be.
Because you
In
don't
this-
need to
in
tap
this
your land, you
standard?
just take an extra turn, right? So it's like draw a card and then get another turn.
Yeah, and you have like planeswalkers and standard. That might actually.
I'm gonna say
be not bad.
evacuate still.
Savor the moment.
How
it's
about
probably
mill? Mill 20.
Oh, that would be
untap.
horrible.
Oh man, it would have to mill like 20.
That'd be pretty good. You just play 4 of them and kill them.
All right, let's answer some fish mail. That was an overall talking about Hour of Devastation. Will be the next week. We'll probably the last week we'll talk about Hour because at that point we'll have the full set. So we'll kind of give our thoughts about the full set. So fish mail.
All right. If you have your questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air. From Bruno Alzuguire, what Gatewatch member would you kill first?
All
Jace, I think.
all at the same time. Yeah, probably Gideon or Jace. They're
I'm
getting
fine with the
boring.
Gatewatch. Now that I know they're not going to be in every set, they can live. I'll show them mercy.
No, they still must die. I think like they have to rotate them out. Like they have to like just die and get someone else, like some other characters in there. It's enough. They've been around. Jace has been around forever. Gideon feels like it's been around forever now. I mean, like first seen in Rise of Eldrazi, right? That's the first one.
They're
Gideon
not going to
Jurek?
kill the main ones, or they'll give them an Elspeth death. It's got to be like Samit or something, like one of these new ones, or these like fringe walkers like you don't remember, like kind of like Venser. Like he wasn't really a
They
main.
can keep Liliana.
Yeah, they can't kill Lily.
They can't.
They kill Lily, I quit. I quit Magic. Next question from Chris Navis. What was more detrimental to Standard? Lack of competent answers or adjusted rotation schedule?
Answers. Lack of answers, I think.
Probably
All
a little bit of both, but definitely leaning towards answers.
By the way, now that you've seen Hour of Devastation, would you feel comfortable with Marvel in the format? We have so many hate
No.
cards. Still no?
Yes.
No.
Yes, I would. I'd be fine. You have a braid. You have solemnity. You have a lot of different things now.
The problem is you still are going to get that one flip, and we had cards that stopped you after one flip before, and it wasn't
how much
enough.
scared do you have to be? You have a 2-mana dual burn remove a artifact card. How many more answers do you need in the format if they can't actually answer the card?
I mean, the problem is they just made that card wrong. Like, it should have entered
Enter
tapped
tapped.
or something. Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think the fact that you get the one free spin, even if it gets answered, I think that's what makes it so miserable.
But
You're
if you're
still just going to randomly get Ulamog some percentage of the
if you're
time.
on the play, you get solemnity. Whatever energy they have at that point, they can't get anymore. So if they can't,
Well, the
meet
problem
the
is you had
Aether
to play
Wars Marvel-
Solemnity main deck. Otherwise, you already
Yeah.
lost game 1, right? Like, that's the problem.
Yeah, but that's like if you didn't main deck something like Stony Silence and Affinity, you lose game 1. I mean,
Yeah, but that's the whole
answer
point of
cards,
Affinity. Do you want standard
Okay,
being
so it'll be like
that?
a Marvel. You lose game 1 and then you go like 2.
Yeah, do you want
I mean, it's
Marvel
like
to
any
be
other-
the Dredge / Affinity of standard? And I don't know if I want
it's
that.
It's also just slow. Like, Solemnity, yeah, if you're on the play, maybe you stop them from getting a spin, but on the draw, they're spinning Marvel when you're casting Solemnity. So I don't know. I don't think it was just...
I mean, I'm just
it
saying
would've locked it out.
you still have a lot of hate cards in a lot of different colors now. So I don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
Eh.
Well, doesn't matter.
probably
Marvel's
right.
not here.
Yeah, Marvel's
Next question from Oyster450. Not that Wizards would unban Emrakul, but how would you feel if they did, now that there's some graveyard hate?
I still say no.
I would feel fine with it from a gameplay perspective, but I would feel horrible because of the precedent it sets. Like, we already have so much uncertainty with bannings, and people are losing confidence. And selling, like, you don't want to worry about Wizards banning and then randomly unbanning cards as well as them just randomly banning them. So I think from a meta perspective, it would really bother me.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
I
don't think they
it's
take
still
the
probably
risk.
too strong.
Unknown, but it's too risky, so I don't think they'll do it. Next question from _JDHD. So what intro deck Planeswalker does Seth think is standard playable this time around?
Probably Nikobolas the Deceiver, I think, is the better of the two.
I'm with
Do you think it can be played as standard, though?
I mean, I can play it in standard. Will I win with it? Probably
I will
not.
give you this one, Seth. I'm actually really liking Nissa Genesis Mage, and that's like I actually think that's not bad at all.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, essentially, you have
It's
Super
7
Garage
mana.
for its +2. No, but you have the card that exerts for 2 mana. I think. Oh, but if it might be 3 mana, that might suck. But you can untap all your mana dorks, so it's really kind of like 5 mana. And at 5, that's like not bad.
But you cast 7 mana so that you can untap 5 mana. Like, to do what? To cast a second Nissa and Planeswalker rule yourself?
Yeah, start giving creatures +5/+5. You just ramp out some more stuff, and then you the -10 is actually pretty good.
You know what? I'm gonna 5-0 a standard league with Nikobolas as my Grixis control finisher.
I do like the Nikobolas.
And I think
too.
it's doable. I think as a control finisher,
is.
you can play Nikobolas. And there'll be
I'm
times
actually
when you
gonna
draw it and you're like, yes, this is the card I actually wanted. Thank you. Destroy a creature, draw a card. Like, I think you actually want to draw it sometimes. Just not, in the first 8 turns.
Yeah.
I'm actually going out there. I think the Planeswalker Nikobolas is actually better than the pack version. I'm going out.
Oh.
I'm doing it.
Oh,
I'm
no.
saying it.
Chaz,
But
Yes.
why?
still, neither of them can play with Dark Intimations with 4 of them in your graveyard. I think that is the worst travesty I've seen in terms of any story-related card. You didn't even... Okay, the pack version, fine, whatever. It has 4 abilities, I get it. But you don't even give us the sub, like, poopy, like, Planeswalker version? Like, come on.
So what's more playable, Dark Intimations or Visage of Bolus? Visage of Bolus is the Planeswalker deck card that
I don't
tutors
even
for
want to hear about
Nikobolas.
these cards anymore. I'm over it.
All right. Next question from Sepic121. Since the last 2 sets had heavy influence from the real world, Ixalan's Mayan, Amonkhet is Egyptian. What other cultures or ancient mythologies should be explored?
I actually want to see less real world like influence sets, more like pure fantasy sets.
I'll go super meta. Like, everything's kind of drawn from the real world. But, I mean, at this point, we had Chinese, like Kamigawa. We had like Mesoamerican. We had what was it? Nordic, like with Theros and stuff. Like you might as well just start roping a lot of other stuff into it.
I mean, I guess if I had to pick one, maybe Vikings because of beards.
Nice. I'm with you. We could bring dwarves back again.
No,
sort of.
no, please don't.
What is your deal with dwarves?
I just don't like the Kaladesh dwarves. Now, Dominaria better have some real dwarves on it.
Okay.
If they're all
the
nice
dwarven,
and building friendship or whatever, like I don't want this.
Seth's favorite. What was it? The dwarven thaumaturge. The thaumaturges.
Yep.
Really horrible card.
All right, next question. Jordan K. Young, thoughts on poor quality in recent sets? Card stock is way thinner, cards curl fresh out of pack, even non-foils.
I haven't noticed it, but I have heard a growing portion of the community has kind of confirmed this. I haven't personally
Did you
noticed
see
it
the
that
picture
much.
on Reddit where it was like, I forgot what it was. It was like 4 of the same common and they look totally different. Like,
Yeah,
it was
I
just
do-
really vastly different quality.
Yeah. I have noticed
I
like
feel-
the fading on a lot of them now.
I feel like this is what we talked about a couple weeks ago with the lack of printing quality being potentially or likely because Wizards switched printers and cut costs, and that's leading to the problems. Because if you look back through the history of Magic, the quality was actually pretty good. It used to be that misprints were so rare, they were like valuable and desired, and now they're so common. You hear about them or see them all the time. There's some variation. So I don't know. I feel like Wizards needs to pick up the quality on printing in general based on this and the leak situation.
All right, and then next question from Coyote Victoria. Listening to the last couple episodes, it seems like you all do not know the definition of iconic masters. Iconic are creatures represented of their colors, so white angel, blue sphinx, black demon, red dragon, green hydra.
Maybe not, but
Still
if that
bad
is
set,
still
no?
the case, I mean, $10 for a Shivan Dragon. I mean, if you want to say it's iconic, that's fine. Maybe I don't, but that would still seem like really awful.
It would be fine for a supplemental product, but because they're doing the marked up price, there aren't that many expensive cards for these creature types, so I'm still confused. And it's really bad marketing.
Yeah.
When you have to explain the name of your product and like come up with reasonings, like, it's just not intuitive at all.
Yeah, it does not sound that fun.
Well, it's not fun playing your 5 mana 5/5 dragon into your 5 mana 4/4 angel and
I can do that in the next core set release.
All right, last question. Lord Dojang, if Marvel hadn't been banned, do you think Planeswalker deck Bolas would have seen standard play? So would you
Timothy,
play it if you
it
could
doesn't
Marvel
need
it in?
You don't even need Marvel. It's that good.
No. Why would you marvel into that when you have so many other options? I do want to marvel into that new humility, though. That's
Okay,
the card I would have been
What if they
marveling
banned
into.
Ulamog? Would you play... So Ulamog is banned, Emrakul is banned, Marvel is not. Would you play Bolas, the Deceiver, in your Marvel deck?
So how we get to Nikobolas as a Deceiver is ban all the actual good stuff.
Only one more
Then
left.
we get to
Only one
actually
more
use
Titan
Nikobolas.
left.
Yes, then at that point we would have to resort to Nikobolas as Deceiver. Which
I'd probably
actually,
play like Desolation Twin or
you
something.
know what? If we just banned all that stuff and Marvel had to resort to Nikobolas as the Deceiver, Marvel could stay.
You would still lose to it. You'd be even saltier. You're like, what is this?
You might have, oh, how crazy would that be? I would love to see that on camera. I don't know what to do about it. The Planeswalker deck, Planeswalker on turn 4, it's too much.
You need to play your deck unsleeved and use the deck box they give you with the Planeswalker deck.
Just to
No
really
sideboard, and you're just like,
Yes.
Etherworks Marvel, Nikobolas the Deceiver. That's all our fish mail for this week. Thanks to everyone for sending them in. Remember, hashtag
thanks.
MTG Fishmail, at MTG Goldfish on Twitter.
That's a great place to end. We will wrap it up for this week. We will see you all next time for more Hour of Devastation. Great questions, great fish mail, awesome gentlemen. This is going to be the MTG Goldfish crew signing out. We will see you all next time.